Thank you for your generous gifts, and thank you, Judy, for your gift of music, and Jeff for your gift of guiding us this morning. I'm going to start by asking you to take those hymn books out again and open back to that page near the front that has the purposes and principles on it, and just have that with you just for a moment. I feel like Joel Osteen asking people to pull out their Bibles. A little history lesson to start. When the American Unitarian Association and the Unitarian Church of America consolidated, when they came together to form the Unitarian Universalist Association in 1961, after much hot debate, leaders and delegates negotiated a set of principles that described the common ground on which the new association stood together. Now, those principles were adequate for their time, but over the next decades, they began to lose their sheen a little bit. And in 1979, Unitarian Universalist Association President Eugene Pickett shared that these principles described embodying freedom and reason and tolerance, described, quote, a process for approaching the religious depths, but they testify to no intimate acquaintance with the depths themselves. At this time, also, the women of our association began to publicly and loudly critique the association and those original principles and their blatantly sexist language. They said the ideals of brotherhood, the dignity of man, the men of goodwill, all that was in there. And there was also growing conflict held over from those negotiations of the 1960s around the fact that the principles at that time were explicitly theistic. They talked about God. And so the time was right for revision. And in 1981, a desexed and non-theistic proposal was put forward to the General Assembly. But knowing what had happened before, and rather than bring this proposal to a vote and invite bitter continuing debate between theists and non-theists explicitly, the General Assembly did what Unitarian Universalists love to do and approved a study committee which surveyed and questioned and listened, and in 1983 brought a set of principles almost identical to the ones you have in front of you to a vote. Desexed, and now including reference to the independent web of all existence, of which we are a part. These principles passed almost unanimously. The story is told there was one deep voice saying no from the back of the hall, just one. But if you look at the principles, those at the top, you'll notice the lack of any theistic language at all. No reference to God. How did that happen? There were people who were resolutely committed to keeping that language in those principles. Knowing what might happen if a debate about that language happened on the floor of the General Assembly, it was decided to split the principles into two sections and to create that second section, what we now call the sources of our tradition. These left wide possibilities for grounding individual and collective beliefs in a variety of traditions: humanism, Christianity, Judaism, other world religions, and earth-based traditions. And in that first source, something which undergirds them all: direct experience of that transcendent mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which uphold life. Well, today is the beginning of a year of exploration of this first source for us. It is this congregation's theme for the year. And I'll be sharing about my experiences today, as will other guest preachers and speakers over the year, and we're hoping that this will inspire other explorations, your explorations. Each sharing, each exploration will be incomplete, imperfect, because each will be individual and specific. But as Leonard Cohen reminds us, that can't stop us from doing our work. Ring the bells that still can ring, he said. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. In our encounter with each other, in our encounters with each other's imperfect knowings, we grow and gain a deeper sense of the holy. And so today I want to share with you some of my experiences of this mystery and wonder, experiences which undergird and inspire and drive my understanding of my place in the universe, what my life means, and what I'm called to do with my precious time. So, the places in my life which have become true homes to me have all been those places where I have been able to stand with the trees on a large body of water, where I can hear the wind in the leaves and feel it on my body, and most importantly, where I can see the moon and the stars. Because during high school, I spent my summers as a counselor at a church camp on a beautiful lake northwest of my hometown of Kingston, Ontario. In the summer between 10th and 11th grade, I was really struggling. I felt alone, I felt isolated, even surrounded by hundreds of campers and counselors. I felt alone. I had spent that school year, you see, coming to terms with the understanding that I was gay. A realization that had been growing for years and was finally coming to conscious understanding. I wasn't yet out to my parents or most of my friends, and certainly not any of my fellow counselors. And I felt painfully alone. And one evening, late, after the campers were asleep, I came out of my cabin and I stood on the shore of the lake under the trees, and I wept. And then the moon rose over the lake and shone on the water. And the breeze ruffled my hair as it made the leaves in the trees whisper those words that I remembered from my childhood. And something changed in me. I saw myself not alone and hopeless, but part of something vast and glorious, connected and whole. I realized, I knew that we, the trees and the lake and the moon and I, were all the same stuff. Every piece of my body and every drop of water in the lake and every cell of the trees above me were created in the heart of a star, just like the ones I could see in the night sky, and like the billions and billions I couldn't see. Now, this wasn't a worded understanding. I just knew. And there was still pain in me, still struggle, but I knew that I was part of something vast, something I could never be separated from. And the core of my understanding of this divine, complex, terrifying, glorious universe is that everything moving and unmoving, everything seen and unseen, known and unknowable, all of that is one. All of that, all of us, are the body and the heart and the spirit of the divine reality. And one of the reasons I know that started that night at the lake. It's written of the ancient hero Gilgamesh, distraught at the death of his dear companion Enkidu, that he wandered and fell asleep, and that one night he awoke from a dream, and, quote, in the presence of the moon he grew glad of life. And so it was that night for me. And let's sing together a little bit. If you turn to number 4 in your hymnal, and I'm going to let you just stay seated for this one. Turn to number 4 in your hymnal and we'll sing, I Brought My Spirit to the Sea.
I brought my spirit to the sea. I stood upon the shore. I gazed upon infinity. I heard the waters roar. And then there came a sense of peace. Some whispered of my soul, some ancient ministry of stars had made my spirit whole. I brought my spirit to the trees that loomed against the sky. I touched each wandering, careless breeze to know if God was nigh. And then I felt an inner flame that fiercely burned my tears. Upright I rose from bended knee to meet the asking gaze.
Each Wednesday evening, since I returned to Chicago this fall, I take a short walk north from my apartment on the lake, blessings and love on the lake, to the Madonna della Strada Chapel on the grounds of Loyola University. Each week, the community gathers there to take part in a short service based in the Taizé tradition. Now, Taizé developed in an ecumenical monastical community, say that 3 times quickly, in France, and consists of short readings and prayers, long silences, and lots of singing. Short, simple, prayerful chants repeated over and over again. Much like the chanting done in other traditions, this is less about the actual words of the chants. In Taizé, they're often in Latin or French or Spanish or Russian, and more about the state that those repetitive chants create in participants. And so I walk north there each week, not for the theology, it is, after all, a Jesuit Catholic church, not for the incense, though I really do like the incense, not for the companionship, don't worry. Not for the companionship, but for the encounter with sound and silence, for the way in which the vibrations of my voice coalesce with the voices of the others around me to rebuild my reality, to attune me to the universe in a new and more whole and holy way. There's no intellect in this experience at all. Despite using words, for me, it's not verbal. Despite the presence of others, it's not really collaboration. For me, it's a primal and often unsettling encounter with myself and with the universe. It's like I can hear the heartbeat of the cosmos, the voice of God, and I have become that heartbeat. The first time I experienced Taizé, I found myself weeping. Not for sadness or for joy, but for the experience of wholeness and attunement it brought to me, and it brings to me. It reminds me again that I am deeply and irrevocably connected to the being of the cosmos, to the song of life. We're going to sing again a little bit now. It's not in your hymnal. I'm going to teach it to you from standing up here, and we're going to sing it together, and then when we're done singing, we're going to sit in silence for a moment. I won't have us sit quite as long as we do in a Taizé service, but we're going to sit in silence. And I encourage you just to use that moment to breathe, to feel the connection. And the song goes like this. I'll sing a line and have you sing it back to me. Okay?
Many windows, one light. Many windows, one light. Many waters, one sea. Many waters, one sea. All lifted hearts are free. All lifted hearts are free. So many windows, one light, many waters, one sea. All lifted hearts are free. Many windows, one light, many waters, one sea. Many waters, one sea, all lifted hearts are free. Many windows, one light, many waters, one sea, all lifted hearts are free.
One deep breath in all together. That song we sang before we sat in silence was written by two Unitarian Universalist ministers. Kendall Gibbons from Minneapolis wrote the words, and Jason Shelton from Nashville the music. It's part of a larger work of music based on the 6 sources of our tradition, each source in a different musical style. In this movement that we just sang based on the 3rd source, the soloist invites the entire audience to participate, repeating that phrase over and over again, interspersed with the words from the world's religions which guide us to the understanding of what many call the Golden Rule. The work was performed at the General Assembly in Fort Lauderdale in 2008, and I was blessed to be the song leader for that moment, leading a room full of thousands of people in singing that phrase over and over and over again. But unlike my experience with Taizé, here the words that we were singing mattered. We were giving collective assent, yes, to the idea that though we come from many paths, many windows, many waters, with many possibilities and beliefs, we together could move the world toward freedom and justice, lifting hearts to freedom. This experience of massive community was a holy one for me, as was another smaller experience that year. When I was director of music at James Reeb Congregation in Madison, we offered a home for the Grassroots Leadership College. Now, this organization works to help people gain skills and knowledge and confidence to become leaders in their own communities, helping people plant seeds of change in their neighborhoods and families. At the end of each year, a celebration was held, honoring those leaders who have made transformative changes in their communities, shaping their families, their schools, their workplaces. It was a great delight to participate in this celebration. And as the graduates and award recipients were announced, I had a deep realization, one of those moments again. You know, I have known since that moment on the lake that I'm held by something of which I'm an integral part. I think we all are. And what I saw and felt and knew in the midst of that celebration of these leaders is that our task is to embody and make manifest that holding in every part of our lives. For Alan Watts, the philosopher, what binds this chaotic world together is love. Not just the emotion love, but love as an organizing and binding principle. Our work is to join together in love to build a world more just and more hopeful. It was love that brought people to Grassroots to learn love of their neighbor, love of their community, love of justice. And so my encounters with the moon and the wind and the trees, my experience of oneness and wholeness as I listen and sing, my experience of the power and the wonder of common effort. These are the experiences that renew my spirit, that open me up to the faith forces that create and uphold life, that tell me in my very bones and fiber and neurons that I am not alone or separate, that I am held and shot through with love, and that the call that I feel and hear is to share that knowing, to passionately and responsibly share in the divine adventure of this world, and to work in community to turn that knowing and that sharing into the building of a world based in humility, mercy, justice, and love. And so I ask, what renews your spirit? What do you encounter? What do your encounters with mystery open you up to? And what do they call you to do in the world? Blessed be. And we're going to sing one final time. If you could rise in body or spirit and turn to number 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song.